Across Wales, people are already building a better future in their businesses, their communities and everyday life. GreenWales brings those stories to life. Wales, future first, brings in the voices shaping what comes next. Because the future of Wales isn't something far away, it's something we're building right now together. Today we're joined by Jane Davidson, former Welsh Government Minister and one of the key architects behind Wales's approach to sustainable development. Including the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, Jane has spent decades shaping what a long-term sustainable Wales could look like. So it's a real privilege to have you with us here today. And Jane, how are you? How are things?
Well, thanks, Gareth. I'm actually very happy to join you here today. I sort of feel like an old woman in an attic most of the time, since I sit here and talk to the world, and I'm still trying to help and work with as many people as possible to create an incredibly positive future for us all here in Wales and beyond.
Well, thank you for that. And I can definitely say from my experience, it's definitely still happening and the future you're still creating is still on its way as well. And I know I only saw you in November at a People Planet Pint event in Pontypridd. So your impact is definitely still rippling right across Wales and influencing how we're all, acting in sustainability across Wales. So thank you for that. We're asking every guest the same set of questions to build a shared picture of Wales and its future. So let's begin. When you think about Wales in 20 or 30 years, what does a good future actually look like?
Well, it's such a good question, that, because 20 to 30 years is one generation. And that means it's our children, or in our case, my grandchildren. And it's about trying to make sure that we take actions today to give them a good life. And we're in quite turbulent times at the moment. I mean, we're filming this when we don't know what the outcome is going to be in terms of the US war on Iran, for example. But we're filming it at a time when the Straits of Hormuz is closed, that there is huge conversations in the UK and around the world about fossil fuels. And the irony for somebody like me, who's always wanted there to be big conversations about moving away from a reliance on fossil fuels, is that if you then talk to organisations like Octopus or anything else, the number of inquiries they're getting for electric heat pumps, for electric cars, for different tariffs is absolutely extraordinary. So sometimes you can be in a moment of shock, which may well show you a different kind of future. And I think for me, therefore, the idea of a future in 20 to 30 years' time, when we are reliant on our own energy, and that energy is renewable, that actually many of us will be driving cars, which also charge our houses, since at the moment batteries are coming down massively in price, and I think that will increase, where many more of us are growing our own food. And certainly we've wanted to move away from pesticides, something else being held up in the Straits of Hormuz, and looking at more organic ways of growing, where we're confident that what we grow will do us no harm. And if we just think about the way we live and what we eat, about what we might do on the land of Wales, I know that many people will not want to change the agricultural nature of Wales, but at the moment we only grow something like 2% of the fruit and vegetables that we eat. So why aren't we growing 100% of the fruit and vegetables we eat? Because what we're doing instead is overstocking on sheep and cattle and then selling those out of Wales. So I think there's something about an idea that Wales, as a very intrepid country with a radical history, that what we should be doing is really taking control of our own future and doing it in such a way where we know that our children are educated with the skills needed, and that's going to include artificial intelligence, where we're eating products which we grow here in a seasonal way, where we are healthier because of our new relationship with nature in the context of school activities, university activities, and keeping older people like me super healthy, where our relationship with the world is predicated on where we can do good and where others can help us do good. And if we think, and where we live in the kind of buildings that are not costing the earth every time we build them, but that they are really energy conscious, so that our bills are really low. We are able to respond to the kind of climatic challenges which undoubtedly will face us, with more extreme storms, more heat, more cold, and that actually there is a level of trust between the Parliament and the government and the people of Wales, that whoever the political party is in power is trying to do with all their political colleagues is to keep Wales as safe as possible in an uncertain world. And I think if I could offer that to my current grandchildren and my grandchild due to be born later this year, that would be a great future, because I'd be offering them a kind of stability, but also an education and understanding, a realistic and evidence-informed understanding of the kind of country we're living in, the kind of relationship with the world that we have, and a much more certain future than we're offering at the moment.
Thank you, Jane, and that's such a well-rounded answer. It's such a good answer to the questions. I really appreciate that. I wrote a couple of things down as you were talking, because we talked about the Iran-American war, and I was sort of saying last night to somebody that sometimes it takes shocks in petrol prices, shocks in energy prices for people to really see the benefits in getting solar panels, getting batteries, getting air source heat pumps, getting an electric car. And I think what we'll see now in the next year, if there's, I just make up the figure, if there's 10,000 homes a year with solar panels, that will double, triple, quadruple, which in some ways is a shame, because you wish they would do that without the shock that we need in order to get people to go along that journey. But the fact that we have that answer, and the fact that there is something that can answer the problems with high energy costs, but also the money you get back from solar, and the benefits to you and your society, with the changing to an electric car, the pollution that's not happening in your local area, the impact that will have. It might be, I'm looking at a Nissan Leaf at the moment. I'm in that sort of catchment of, I have a petrol vehicle right now. The petrol's gone up by 20 pence compared to a few weeks ago. And I'm going, right, I now need to cut back my driving. And I am looking at getting that Nissan Leaf. It'll be a used Nissan Leaf, but the range will be fantastic for me and my family. And what they say about the range, the limited range and the second-hand nature of electric cars, I don't think is that true anymore. The range does stay together, and I think the one I'm looking at is 168 miles. That will do, I've worked out, 98% of what I need a car to do. So it's a fantastic replacement. I think the only difference is the juggling of charging, and working out when to charge. You said about batteries, I've got 10 kilowatts worth of batteries, but the battery technology is evolving so quickly, with like sodium batteries coming through now into the market. There was this, forget what it's called, like an iron filing hung battery. That looks really exciting. So the fact that hopefully in the next 10 years there'll be many different types of technology you can take advantage of, and you rightly said, with cars becoming your home battery, and hopefully having solar panels built into the cars, I think that would be a good move as well. And then you talk about food and how we produce our own food, only 2% in Wales. I found an interesting figure with strawberries now in the UK. They've moved from 90% 10 years ago being produced outside in fields to now being produced into greenhouses and controlled environments. We can 100% do that in Wales. We can bring that trade. There's a lot of trade we can do in Wales, and I think the future is definitely looking bright for Wales, and things like the Future Generations Act is putting that sort of framework in place to help inform public bodies, people who fund grants, etc., to put these things in motion. And I'm seeing it with the grassroots series going out and about, as with Coalfield Flower Farm, and how they're turning an old coalfield into a flower farm, and then hopefully they will connect to, I think there's 5 other local flower farms, which blew my mind, knowing that many already existed in Wales, in South Wales, so there must be many more across Wales. They'll create a hub. You'll have the forestry industry being tackled then with the supply chains and the pesticides, etc., in the flowers, and Wales will produce its own sort of flower industry, creating a smaller supply chain, putting that money back into the Welsh economy and creating opportunities for everybody in local areas as well. So I think it's an exciting time to be a part of the project, which is great in Wales. So
yeah, and I think one of the most important aspects of this is that we live at a time when we know there is going to be a tremendous impact of artificial intelligence on our lives. And there are so many ways this can be used for good. So in creating management systems, technological systems, if we just think now, organizations like Octopus are already doing not only the smart charging, but very cheap charging at times that the grid isn't used by most people. But they're also, offering intelligent alternatives so that rather than powering down wind turbines and governments having to pay for the powering down of wind because they can't get it onto the grid, which is a very monolithic old structure, that actually people that can be offered free electricity from exactly those wind turbines at those hours when others are not using it, or even when it is at peak use, and actually people could take more from the grid. So there's all sorts of incredibly clever ways that we will be able to use artificial intelligence for the future that will help us manage these things. And I think another point, and your point about your going to buy a Nissan Leaf is a really good one, is that as a result of your getting the Nissan Leaf, others will be interested. When I came to live here and bought solar panels back in 2009, a number of other houses round us did too, because they saw them on our house and they heard about the benefit. It was a significant financial benefit at the time. When I bought my electric car in 2015, which only does about 80 miles because I was an early adopter, actually now most of my friends, they've been in it, they like it, they have bought electric cars. Same thing with my electric bike. So actually every time a pioneer picks this up, others in their community follow. So you need government incentives, you need radical organisations which will change their methods of charging, and you need early adopters. And that's a pretty unbeatable triangle.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think you can see the fruits of all of this sort of coming through now. You're an early adopter with solar. When you look around now, and it feels like we've got to that point now, it's like mass adoption. It's everywhere now, and I think it's undeniable the evidence of how good it is for you as an individual in your home. I think I had solar last year, and my payback, so an ISA savings account is only like 3.5%, 4%, and the payback I have on solar is 10.2%. So it was a better investment for me to buy solar than it was to invest that money into a bank. And I just think now, because I think as soon as you start making a few of those sustainable choices, other things start to creep in. And the newest one for me was the electric car. And I've worked out if I have an electric car, the payback will be an extra £1,500 a year after the £300 it takes to fill it.
And let's go back to the bank for a minute, Gareth, as well, because when you have a look at what your bank invests in, it can be deeply shocking. So change, and there's a list of ethical banks. I mean, and there are quite a few of them now. I mean, Triodos and Co-op kind of top the list, but there are quite a few of them now, and it's one click to make the change. And therefore, it's very, very easy for anybody to do it. But taking your money away from the fossil fuel providers is another incredibly easy thing to do. And it's a real signal to children and grandchildren that you want to look after their futures.
I love that. Thank you. So the second question is, what responsibility does your role carry in protecting that future?
Well, the most recent big piece of work that I've done has been the Wales Net Zero 2035. And that was a really exciting commission, jointly commissioned by the Welsh Government and Plaid Cymru. It was about looking at whether Wales could accelerate its response to the climate and the climate challenges. From 2050, which is what legislation determines that Wales, Scotland, or Northern Ireland and England have to achieve net zero by, to 15 years earlier. Now, that's a challenge in itself. But when you see that actually net zero, which for anybody who hasn't come across the phrase before, basically means that we have reduced all our carbon emissions to zero, or if we can't reduce them all, that actually we create positive responses to them through basically tree planting or other initiatives like that. That means the overall effect is that we have zero emissions. So if we're trying to achieve zero emissions to make climate and nature safer for us all for the future, then we have to take a series of actions. And the Climate Change Committee, which is the statutory committee of the United Kingdom, told Wales that it wouldn't achieve its net zero obligations until 2055. So it'll be 5 years later than they should be. And the reasons that would be the case were both big industry and agriculture. So when I was asked to take the lead on how we might look at accelerating actually by 20 years from where Wales was likely to be, I thought I'd get some of the best experts in the world, because I'm a huge fan of evidence-based policy, that I would then get some academic underpinning from the Wales Centre for Public Policy and Cardiff University, because they really know Wales well, and they know what the opportunities are, they know what the barriers are, but they know what the circumstances are. So I knew that they would be really quick at getting up to speed. And then I wanted all of our work tested time and time and time again through communities who are working in the fields of food, of buildings, of transport, of energy and education, and the future of work. So we did a 2-year project that was published about 1.5 years ago now. And what we aimed to do through that was to demonstrate that if we act on the kind of climate challenges now, we can actually create the kind of Wales I described earlier, because we will be healthier, because we will have fewer emissions, because we won't have diesel or petrol in the mix. We will be better fed because we will take control of our own food consumption, and we'll actually make sure that the people of Wales are fed well and with as few pesticides as possible. So how can we grow in a way where we're conscious we're not contributing a problem to children's brains? We change the education system and we change the nature of work. Can we be really imaginative? Could we imagine a universal basic income, for example, so that then we look at rewarding additional work that is useful for the country? And can we imagine a 4-day week, for example, so that we spend more time with our communities, because so many people live alone now and they don't have access to resources. What kind of curriculum are we going to teach? That needs to change dramatically every few years at the moment, as we know more about artificial intelligence, as we know more about what's happening in the context of climate and nature challenges, as we want to create a country that's more equal, as we want to give more people opportunities. And also there will be a kind of huge role as well in terms of how we adapt to current challenges. I have relatives that have suffered in terms of flooding in Wales. We regularly see wildfires on the hills in Wales. Luckily, they're normally started by kids thinking it's a prank, but those pranks are going to be increasingly dangerous in terms of heat. We know that back in the heat stroke of 2003, thousands actually of older people died across Europe. Now, our homes need to both be able to be insulated well so that they can be heated well, but also they can be cooled well. So we need to think of all these things in a way that helps us as humans survive and thrive, but also, which we've not been doing, make sure that we help nature survive and thrive. And I just think this is an incredibly exciting future that we can create. And what we did through our Wales Net Zero work was to say, these are all the benefits. So the pain is only in the short term, in the context of governments needing to outlay more to make sure that we're safer, to put the adaptation measures in place. And, you know, if we have to, and this is a last resort, but it may be that some communities near the sea need to move further back up hills. That's happening in the US at the moment in the context of floods. It's happening at the US in the moment in the context of moving away from wildfire sources. We are going to have to see these things happen, not just in Wales, but everywhere in the world. There'll be these challenges. Sometimes we can put barriers in place to make communities last in one place longer. In other places, we can't. We should be thinking about this now, because otherwise the people who will be most affected are those with the least ability to move. And often they're the very young and the very old. So what was great about our net zero work, and we'll put a link up with this programme so that people can have a look at it, all of it is about opportunity. All of it is about better public transport systems, better houses. It's about better quality of food closer to the people. It's about making sure that we have energy sources, both that can look after ourselves and our communities, but also can make sure that we can fund our travel habits and others. All of this is positive. And actually, it also builds on the 20-mile-an-hour default speed system that we've had in Wales for about 18 months now. That has reduced pollution in measurable ways. That has saved a number of children's lives, because even though some people are very opposed to it, actually in their own communities, people love it. And they love it because it keeps us all safer and it's much more pleasant as an existence. So if we think of these things that initially people might want to oppose because it's a new way of living, we know there are massive benefits to living locally in a major community way that brings all generations together and actually helps people work together, play together, live together in a way that is positive for us all.
I love that. And you know, you said something that sometimes it's quite controversial to talk about the 20-mile-an-hour limit, you know, and I have found it a bit frustrating in the Rhondda, driving around 20 miles an hour. But I have to say that on the whole, I've seen a huge positive change in the way that society runs around the roads. Because back before this, you know, you'd get normally people do 5 miles above whatever the limit is. So if it was 30, they'd be doing 35 to 40 in reality. And if you think in those built up terrace streets, someone doing that sort of speed is incredibly dangerous. And what I've found in the last, since the acts come in, since the laws come in, is that one, people who do get frustrated, they can't do anything about it because it is the law. So that person who is driving 20 miles an hour sort of controlling all the traffic at the same time to do the same. So it's actually a really good educational thing for society and for everybody past that. It's also taking people off the roads because they don't want to drive like that. So then they're cycling. They might be catching the train instead because it's quicker. And I think this is where we need to be looking at alternative transport. It can't just all be on the road, you know? And I think with the electrification of the railway, that's been a fantastic thing. I think this year they're going to change the timetable where instead of one train every 30 minutes, it'd be one train every 15 minutes, which is much more like a metro, like a London system where you can just turn up and go. And these things are integral to the next part of the journey and of Wales becoming net zero, but also a society that's much more friendly to each other, creating that community bonding. And in my street, they were looking at reverting the speed limits because they're reviewing lots of speed limits right now. But me and the street banded together, made complaints about it, and our street and the Forest Road is actually being changed all to 20 miles an hour. So it shows you how that legislation's come through. There was a 20, 30, 20, and at the end of it, when they were going to revert it all back to 30, it's all going to 20, including the forest path as well, because there was no pavements. People walk their dogs. People, you know, you have delivery drivers coming down there, and it just makes it safer for everyone. And it's just a nice thing to sort of see that people really were against it to begin with, but people really are now starting to see the benefits of it as well.
I think, Gareth, your point there is really, really important, because round here where I am, and I literally, the 20 mile an hour 30 is actually at the end of our track.
Okay.
So where I am, because right on the edge of the village. What has annoyed people has not been the 20 so much as when it's 20, 30, 20, 40, 20, 50. You know, it's when there's been a lot of changes in a very short period of time, and therefore you're totally concentrating on the speed limit, and therefore you're actually not driving safely. So I think that the fact that the local authorities have had an opportunity now to review the speed limits everywhere in Wales, and in fact most of them, the large majority of them, have not changed, or these odd ups and downs have been changed. So basically, safety has won here. But the critical thing, and I think that this is something which is very important to the whole of this conversation, it was a good idea, but it was not well implemented at the beginning. And I think this whole notion, and this takes us back to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, where one of the statutory ways of working, one of the ways of working which is required by all public organisations in Wales, including the Welsh Government, is to involve people about whom decisions are being made. And that's a very brave and radical act for a government to do, and therefore most of them don't. Or they have a short consultation or a focus group or something like that. Whereas actually, if you involve people, we were one of the pilot communities for 20 miles an hour. So we love it. We've always loved it. Once we agreed to be a pilot community, and those people advocating the pilot, held many meetings in our village hall before it was implemented. So everybody knew about it. And then it actually became really positive. And I'm afraid if you're going to do something which is completely countercultural, that goes against everything we've had for all our adult lives, and for somebody, I'm just about to be 70 next year. So basically, I've had 55 years, well, just under that. I've had 50 years of driving at 30 miles an hour. That's a lot to get people to change, unless they understand the reason behind it, and unless the delivery hasn't taken them by surprise. And it did. It took a lot of people in Wales by surprise on day one, when they suddenly had to change their behaviour. So if we want the best impact, we actually have to take people with us. We have to involve them. We have to work together on making things happen. And then we don't have a situation when there's a massive backlash against a policy that's actually good for all of us.
I think that's exactly it. And so the beautiful thing, I think, with the Future Generations Act, we've had it for 10 years now. It's been very specifically implemented in different areas throughout Wales. But what I find from going on the road is everybody's take of the Future Generations Act is slightly different, but it suits everybody's business, and the act doesn't get watered down. It's just how people embed it within their business. And that's been really inspiring to see since Christmas. I've done 12 different episodes now. We've gone to see charities. I was with the Environment Centre in Swansea yesterday. I was in Bridgend with Green Space SOS a couple of weeks ago, where they were building an otter hide. We said about Caulfield Flower Farm, Grow Rhondda, all these different businesses. They're all embedding the Future Generations Act. It's been happening for 10 years behind the scene. And with the commissioner coming through then, and we've got Derek Walker, who's going to be on the show. And you can see that every commissioner has a different mission about embedding that into Wales. And what I'm hoping to sort of see is that the Future Generations Act being fully embodied in Wales. And I'm wondering what you think, how that would feel different day to day if Wales did embody the Future Generations Act as a whole.
Yeah, no, it's a really important question. And you said at the beginning that people have their own interpretation. So I always go back to the Act itself on the basis that, what has motivated me for about 20, 30 years now has been the Brundtland definition of sustainable development. development that meets the needs of the present without compromising on the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And of course, that is the principle at the heart of the Act. The idea that we take decisions today and we consciously make sure that we don't cause problems for future generations down the line as a result of the decisions we take today. Now, for me, that's just completely obvious. But for some people, they find it difficult to get their head around it, particularly if we think about short political cycles. If we think about how long people stay in jobs, if we think about how much our lives change if we're a parent and our kids growing up or anything. So it's a very new concept to a lot of people, and yet it's utterly necessary if we're not going to cause humans long-term problems. And of course, the climate problems are largely caused by the way we've used fossil fuels in our lives and continue to use them. And if we reduce that tomorrow, we still would have some climate problems, but not as bad as those if we carry on using them as we are at the moment. So the Act basically has three elements to it. I mean, first of all, it's got a sort of lovely base, a very Welsh base, which is thinking we have to think in the round about our society, our economy, our nature and our culture in Wales. And of course, if you put those four together, it's like an Eisteddfod chair of an Act. It's a very solid, distinctly Welsh structure. What is our culture and identity? What is our society? We're very community focused. How do we make sure that we have an economy that links to who we are in Wales and what we can create in Wales? And what kind of society do we want? Do we want an inclusive one, or do we want one that is very unequal, as happens in other parts of the world? And yet we know also that countries where the societies are more equal, and Scandinavia is a clear example here, are happier. So if we want to be a happier country, and we want to be a more equal country, we want to look after our nature, we want to look after our economy, and we want to look after our culture. So these are the bedrock elements of the Future Generations Act. And then the Act says, well, if we're going to do that, we're not a UN member state, a United Nations member state. Britain is, but Wales is not, because it's a smaller government. But if we think about our role in the world, how can we make the people of Wales more prosperous, more globally responsible, have a vibrant culture and language, have cohesive communities, be more resilient, be healthier, be more equal? And so these are all about ambitions that actually will contribute to the sort of visions that you and I have been talking about for the future of us and the future of Wales. And if we carry out these visions, we will be delivering on the UN Sustainable Development Goals that most countries in the world have actively signed up to deliver by 2030. So this is Wales playing its part, not just as part of the UK and not just as part of Europe, but as part of the world. And the one that excites me most about this is all the public organisations, including the Welsh Government, have to explain to both the Independent Commissioner for Future Generations and to the Auditor General, the person who looks after the money and makes sure that taxpayers get good value. We have to explain to them how all the organisations are showing that they are being preventative. They want to make sure that everything they do to deliver for current and future generations prevents bad things happening, that they're thinking long term, that they're collaborating with each other to deliver really exciting and new outcomes, that they're integrating how they work in the context of those outcomes. And most importantly, they involve people about whom decisions are being made. So if you see the Future Generations Act as a structure, as a form following a function, the function is how can we make the people of Wales healthier, happier? How can we make the environment of Wales healthier and happier? How can we make the species in Wales healthier and happier? If we make us all healthier and happier, that's what the Future Generations Act can help us deliver. It's like a mission for a country that is fit for the future. And because it's a mission for a country fit for the future, there are many, many other countries in the world looking at this at the moment. The United Nations loves it. And you talked about businesses earlier. There are so many businesses that are using the Future Generations Act, even though they don't have to, as a way of taking responsible business decisions. And if I just talk about one business in Wales, Faith in Nature, where the headquarters actually of the business is in Manchester, but the people who started it, the founders, live in Wales. And they decided that they were going to put nature on the board of their business so that they could improve the ethical nature of the business, and they could actively think about all their decisions with nature in mind. And another business that doesn't happen to be in Wales but is learning from Wales, House of Hackney, based in London, quite a high-end design studio in terms of what you might want in your house, your wallpaper, your furnishings, or anything like that. What they've done is not just put nature on the board, but future generations on the board, following the Welsh lead. And putting future generations on the board, they have also changed their articles of association of their business. And so we now have businesses in Wales teaching others in other parts of the UK, who are now potentially teaching us all that if you have a business here in Wales and you want to be more ethical, change your articles of association. Find ways of putting future generations and nature on your board, because this is the kind of extraordinary development we may see over the next 30 years. And just imagine if the real model for ethical businesses came from Wales because of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act.
If you see now, social value is becoming a really important thing for big organisations, and what the Future Generations Act does in bucket loads is create social value naturally.
Absolutely.
And what I'm seeing because we've got a micro and an SME economy in Wales. If 95% of the Welsh economy is SME, I think it's 80% of that is micro, and 60% of that is a zero employer. So you can kind of say we're all micro pioneers in our own rights, and I'm being so inspired across Wales at the moment, and I'm only going up to Mid Wales, bit of South, bit of East, and I'll be going up to North Wales next month for the Earth I Steadford. And what I'm seeing is the Future Generations Act being implemented, and as we're 10 years into it now, those first generations of businesses that have embedded the Future Generations Act throughout the business and the impact that has on them as a person, they're seeing that and we've talked about AI, and I think AI has taken away some of the jobs we don't exactly want to do anymore, but it helps somebody have a business. So if there's a one person doing, like I use the example of floristry or coffee shop or something like that, they can have another 3 employees to be an AI for them to help them do that back end stuff. So they can be the artisan and they can have the passion and they can do what they love doing for Wales. It would never have worked without assistance, because they wouldn't be able to earn that sort of money to be able to pay the staff. But it's allowing even someone like myself to be able to do this show. I have AI that does help me be able to do it, and without it I wouldn't be able to do it, because I wouldn't get the advice and the learning from those tools. And I think it's how we use those tools is the most important thing, and what I'm seeing throughout Wales at the moment. And the micro pioneers, they are using it all for good. They're using the Future Generation Act for good, and they're embedding it throughout Wales, and it's been very inspiring so far.
And I think Gareth, linked to that is I do wonder sometimes whether, in essence, the kind of how you manage the economy in Wales has not yet fully reflected what the strengths are in the economy in Wales. The strengths of the economy in Wales are in those micro businesses. And historically, we've brought big businesses to Wales. Now, sometimes that's been there with a very long legacy. I mean, my very first job was in Panasonic, building televisions in my A-level holidays before starting university back in 1972. And of course, Panasonic was one of many Japanese firms who relocated here at the time and have stayed here. And that's partly why my book came out in Japanese last year. And what I love about it is, my book is Future Gen Lessons from a Small Country. But in Japanese, it's the well-being of future generations until it is done, which is just absolutely brilliant. And it's also yn Gymraeg hefyd, Gweithio Bachan. So there's, the way in which we look at our economy in Wales, perhaps we've never put quite enough support in for the small, radical, ethical businesses delivering against the Future Generations Act. There are much better procurement arrangements in place now since the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act for the public service to procure from businesses which are supportive of the Future Generations Act. So you could see that Wales could be a tremendous model at all of these levels, particularly because AI can take some of the back office functions away. And therefore, it's the brilliance of the minds of people in Wales, the ethical entrepreneurs, the artists here. There are so many people with so many skills who are so innovative. And it's like, how can we give all of them a platform that actually helps them have a good income for their own quality of life, but also their incomes contribute towards a better economy for Wales.
Yeah, and Joe, I think Wales is ahead of the game in some ways, where the microeconomy is probably the future, because big business, big factories hiring thousands of people was the answer years ago. You want those big factories to come in. Now, again, with AI coming in, etc., those big factories, lots of workers, thousands of people, they're not so much needed anymore. And with the expense of pensions and national insurance and wages and all the rest that comes with it, all they're doing is slimming down. And Wales is in a perfect position now where we actually have this amazing economy that is micro and small. As I said, it makes up 95% of our economy. I think, and you're right again, where I just don't think as a country, right up in the high levels, we have quite understand or give the right support to really encourage these businesses to thrive. And the inspiring thing I'm seeing lately is people don't want to partner anymore. They want to collaborate. And collaboration, they're seeing the value in collaborating. Someone has the venue, someone has the product, someone has the workshop. And by coming together, they're actually producing something that a big company couldn't even do. Where back in the day with partnerships, you'd come in, deliver something and leave. And what we found was when they left, the thing that they were solving is no longer solved. And I think that's where the communities in Wales then have seen, if we collaborate long term, we can actually create the answers long term for society. And in some ways, it's dialing the clock back, but with modern takes and a modern innovation, which I find very hopeful for our future.
I think we do have to say we do need both, but we need to be thinking always about what are appropriate industries in Wales. I mean, we have a lot of natural resources in wind and water, etc. So we know we could be much more imaginative about how we create energy, and that will create jobs. And we do need also to make sure that while there's a space for startups, there's also a space for stable businesses. So I think that the full employment package, those things about whether or not we change the number of hours people work a week, but also the fact that we can relocate businesses into rural areas because so many people can work from home. And living in a rural village as I do, having lived in the valleys as you do, it's been incredible that since COVID we've had actually a lot of people relocate here with skills that are appropriate to the area. And that's very, very exciting. So as you say, now there are community workspaces in the local town where people can get together and create imaginative ideas. So we are looking at very different ways of people engaging with each other over opportunities for work. One of the things that has to underpin this now is we absolutely have to keep our eye firmly on a ball of the best internet access to every single person in Wales. It's one of those things that's been talked about forever, but it just needs to be delivered. Because if we have really good internet access, we can manage our public transport better. We can manage our purchase of our food and other things better. But we can do that in a very local way too. We can set up local depots for storing things that come in from outside. So we're thinking local and thinking ways that we regenerate our local community, and our community supports us, would be a very Welsh way in to do this stuff. But having an underpinning stable industries, particularly in all those areas that we're going to need. We need all that insulation. We need people building high quality, low carbon houses. We need people putting all the energy structures in place and creating new ones. So huge opportunity for universities, for masters coming out of universities. I mean, my own Trinity St David, I mean, out of Swansea came some of the largest number of startups in the UK, for example, of businesses, of people who wanted to stay locally. So yes, it's how we can celebrate and support all of this. And then there's a role for government in making sure there's really good quality internet, there's tax breaks and others. But I hope this would then become a massive draw to other people to come and live in Wales because of the Future Generations Act, knowing they'd be living in a country that wanted to look after intergenerational arrangements going far, far into the future.
This sort of brings me on to my last question, and I think it'll be a difficult, probably the most difficult question. It's the most positive, and the whole thing's been lovely, so thank you very much. But if you, maybe I'll let you have 3 instead of 1. So I was going to ask, just to be gentle, is there a project, or are there 3 projects or organisations in your orbit? Because Wales, you know, we're a small country, but it is vast with projects and things that we are doing. So is there a project, organisation, research in your orbit that you think is quietly doing brilliant work that GreenWales should go and see? And this can be Wales wide.
All right, I'm going to give you 3 different ones.
Yeah.
I'm going to start really local. We have a superb market garden and farm shop here called Gleeblands. And they actually moved from the centre of Manchester. So they'd done it in a city before and came to do something in our village of St Dogmell's. And they are incredibly well supported by the local community. And a lot of what they sell is grown or made, within a mile. And what they have done is taken the edge of farmers' fields to grow some of the brassicas, for example. So it is the early model for how we could grow much, much more of our own food. Because where we live, it's peripheral sheep grazing land, and yet it is growing organic produce. And it just shows it can be done. So I think they're great because they had to adapt a city model to a country environment. And they are really, really strong on issues around food policy, etc. So they'd be a great one for you to go and talk to as part of your series. Another one which is very different is called Tir Natur, and that's in the middle of buying some land in the Cambrian Mountains with huge support from the farmers adjacent to that land, which is very important if what you're going to do is what some people might call rewilding, for others is old-fashioned conservation. But the idea is looking at how to sequester as much carbon as possible, because at the end of the day, we won't be able to achieve real zero. We will have to have carbon in the landscape that is giving us the other side of the scale. So we do need these projects, which are being really imaginative. And they're doing it. They're not doing it without species. They're doing it with major human intervention and working with big bovines, for example, in terms of managing the land, because those are old structures for translating seeds into plants. And so I think that's another one where they have thought incredibly long and hard about how they do it. And they haven't just gone in and bought land and jumped in, but they've developed a relationship with local farmers. They will be doing this together. So sometimes it's the early adopter approach again. You need people who are going to take these kinds of principles forward. And I think the third one I've actually mentioned before, but I think it would be to interview the founders of Faith in Nature, because it is a brand. I hope it's in your bathroom. It's been in my bathroom for 20 years because the family that founded it in a previous generation, and they've always had incredibly good products, and they were at the forefront of using recycled materials for bottles, as well as always sourcing the kind of amazing kind of herbs and flowers that they use from ethical sources. So I think that the fact that the founders have thought so hard about how they want every single part of what they do as an organisation to be ethical, to be environmentally friendly, so they can stand up and say, we are faith in nature. And we are faith in nature, and their new steps have been taken because one of the founders, Anne, stood up and asked, why can't nature be our chief executive? And what a question. And then, so why can't nature be on the board? And of course, in business structures, the first one is impossible. But actually, you can change business structures to accommodate the ambition. And their book, Nature's Boardroom, tells that story. And I think we need to make sure these stories are told, because without the stories being told, people don't often look to a small country like Wales for their lessons. And it's only since the book, Future Gen Lessons from a Small Country, was published in 2020 that many people even knew that Wales had a Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So I think telling the story is as important as what you do. So it's why you do what you do, how you do what you do, what you do, and how to tell the story of what you do are the kind of really, really important steps. So I love the fact that what you're doing through this podcast is telling the story of what Wales does, and particularly looking at how that learning can be translated into other situations.
I really appreciate that, and that's exactly why we exist, because we have, again, all these fantastic businesses all around Wales. As you say, at the start we talked about how negative the world is right now and the challenges that we face as a country, and I think Wales has been good in the past at beating itself up and not thinking it has the answers, and we always look out. But what I'm seeing more and more is the answers are here. Everything we want is here. The positivity is here. It's how we bang that drum and represent ourselves. And this is what this channel is all about. We've got the grassroots edition of the channel, and then we've got the Wales Future First, which hopefully will bring the high level down together. So we bring the grassroots and the high level chat together to bring it to the masses, so everybody can then get on board and see what a great country we've got and the future gen is.
Yeah, I think one of the really important points there is so much of the natural resources of Wales have been extracted for the benefit of others. The kinds of conversations we're having now is when, if we extract a resource, we do it for the benefit of Wales. And if we extract a resource, we do it in a way that doesn't compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So if I can just end with one of my absolutely favourite quotes, which is, do unto future generations what you would have had past generations do unto you. And so when I'm thinking of the oldest person I love, my mum, who's 96, and the youngest person I already love, although he or she is not going to be born until October, I'm there in the middle. And if my newest grandchild lives as long as my mum, between us we will span 200 years. So if we are not taking decisions that actually look after my next grandchild for his or her life, we are failing them. And so I'm just asking everybody on this call to think about the long view. Think about the people you love and think about what you're prepared to do to ensure that their lives are positive into the future.
Thank you very much, Jane. That's absolutely amazing. And what a fitting way to end the show and to end the series as well. So thank you very much. This is Wales, building a better future together. Big thanks to Afango, powering Sustainable Productions, for making this possible. You're watching GreenWales, Wales Future First. If you believe in the future of Wales, support it. Like, comment and subscribe.